Get out your pen and paper because I'm going to be going through a lot of information, probably faster than I expected since I'm a fast talker sometimes when I put out a lot of information. The first thing that I want to tell you in grant and proposal writing is not even writing, and I'm going to be looking at this piece of paper because I made myself some notes and I often forget where the camera eye is, so I'm going to be wandering a little bit. But anyway, the first step is what you want to do is determine what it is that you want to do. And the reason why I say that is a lot of people will see a funding announcement or something of that nature and try to walk themselves backwards into whatever the funding is. So that is to say that they're not mission driven, they're funding driven. And funders know that, especially if you're all over the map with the projects and proposals that you make. A lot of the teams are the same that receive your grant requests as far as if it goes to a certain department, say the Department of Homeland Security. If they get a million different requests from you that are all over the map and not anything to do with what they consider your mission or your vision to be, or they receive a bunch of different requests that are all over the map and they can't connect a singular mission or vision, they will know that you are funding driven and not mission driven. So the first thing is that you need to be mission driven. Now, if you're watching this and you're an individual who's looking for an individual grant, I will tell you that it's not impossible to get an individual grant. This video is not necessarily focusing on that, but I will give you some tips like right off the bat. The first thing is that it's likely going to be a company that's going to make the donation. I think there's like the 100 Black Men something or other. I know I'm probably messing the name up. But these are more like contest type things, like Shark Tank type things that are going to give an individual grant. They do have like micro grants that may come out for individuals, but you're going to need to have like a business or an idea or a patent. Like I said, Shark Tank, like behind what you're doing, or possibly be a refugee or a single mother, a more scholarship type thing. I think like Macy's, if I'm not mistaken, and a couple other companies will do that. But again, like I said, it's more toward the contest end of things than like your traditional grant. With that being said, you're going to want to, for access to the most funding, you're going to want to be a company or a nonprofit. Nonprofit being the preference because that's where the most funding is concentrated, in the nonprofit arena. And a nonprofit is quite simply a mission-driven business. Yes, there are a lot of IRS guidelines, but the way you have to think of it is a mission-driven business, and you don't get to take the equity out. The equity goes strictly toward whatever your mission is, serving whatever population or cause that you are attempting to serve. With reference to startup grants, because I get a lot of questions about startup grants, it is possible again, but it's going to be one of those contest type things. A lot of the ones that are classified as startup are going to want you to already be an organization, not trying to get to the point of being an organization. They're going to want to see who you served. So yeah, it's a startup grant, but you're going to need to put some money in it or get donors to put money in it for you so that you can start showing numbers of people served or what you have done to further the cause that you have in your mission, your stated cause. Now that we've gotten that out the way, I'm going to start talking more towards not the nonprofit arena. It's not impossible to get an individual grant. It's not impossible to get a company grant. There are even state organizations that will give a particular company a grant. It's just a lot more funding out there for nonprofits. My experience is in the nonprofit and home health care arena. That is to say, a Medicaid-funded home health care agency, and nonprofits that have various levels of funding from the local level on up to the federal level. So when you look at grants or funding requests or RFQs, we'll go through those acronyms. So an RFP is a request for a proposal. And we're getting ready to talk about proposals in a second, but now they want what you got. They want you to tell them all about whatever it is that you're wanting to do and ask them for the money. And they want you to tell them what you're going to do and how many people you're going to serve or what kind of an impact your cause is going to make specifically with their money. Then there's the RFQ, request for qualifications. They're saying, we've got this money. We want to see who's out there that meets the qualifications to receive this funding. You haven't asked for the money yet. You just want them to know that you're interested, which brings me to the LOI, which is a letter of intent. They might tell you, hey, we've got $50 million and we're going to split it up between this many organizations. And we want to know who intends to apply for this. It's similar to an RFQ, but a lot of times it's literally one page, and you're just kind of, probably the executive director is going to write it to the organization, or at least sign it to the organization, letting them know that the organization intends to apply for this particular grant. All right. So now that we've determined what we want to do, who we are, what we want to do, now we're able to look for funding. That is funding specifically tailored to who you are and what you want to do. And remember, we talked about earlier, we don't want to walk back from funding, find the funding, and then try to make ourselves fit into it. We want to be mission driven. So once you've located the funding, and I'm going to pause there for a second because some of you are probably asking, where do I go to look for the funding? For nonprofit organizations, you probably have a wealth of organizations at your local level. Like I'm in Georgia. So we have the Georgia Center for Nonprofits where you can pay a membership, and I don't remember if there's a way not to pay a membership, but you can pay a membership and you can go in and do your research to find out which local foundations or even national foundations fit the criteria for donating or giving or funding what it is that you are trying to do. All right. And then also there's grants.gov. That's the federal level. That's the federal level of spending. Now, I want to caution you, it's not impossible to get a federal grant as a new organization. It's just improbable. It's going to be a little bit tougher for a new organization and not an established one to get federal funding. A lot of times they're looking for just established organizations, or they may even put a requirement on how many years of operation or what kind of an impact you will have had in the arena prior to even being considered. And then you have to consider the fact that there's a lot of competition out there on the national level for national funding. Written national grants. I've been funding for national grants, but like I said, it's just a little difficult. And with grants in general, you want there to be a build-up, kind of like you're building your credit. So you might want to start with a donation of products or goods and keep track of your numbers, keep track of your impact, whether that's individuals served or whether, we'll say paint, because I'm a painter by trade. So you might want to keep track of the number of square feet that you paint with the donated jars. However you quantify your impact, you're going to want to make sure that you keep track of that so that you can demonstrate that you are worthy of receiving this funding. When you locate the funding, whether it be grants.gov or GuideStar is a good one. I think GuideStar, you do have to pay a membership fee for that too. To do research, you could do a good old-fashioned Google search and find a number of reputable organizations and foundations and things of that nature to apply. You're going to want to take a look at the funding and see what kind of funding it is. And I'm pausing there because this is very important. Now, there are several different types of funding. One funding you want to look out for is reimbursement, which means that you have to do whatever it is you said you were going to do first before they're going to release those funds to you. So whether you say you're going to feed the homeless and you're going to provide 100 meals with this grant, you're going to have to do, let's say it's over a year, you'll have to do your monthly, bi-monthly, yearly, whatever. However they tell you in the grant to do it, you're going to need to do a drawdown. And that is provide evidence that you served a certain number of people in whatever format they're asking you for, and then they will give you the money. Then they have like grant cycles. So they may tell you in the grant, we're going to release the funds in October, and by January, you have to be providing the service that you said that you were going to provide. On the federal level, sometimes that check doesn't come out on time, but they still expect that you provide the services on the date and time that you said that you were going to provide those services. So you may need to secure backup funding or some sort of bridge funding. They do have bridge loans to get you from the day that you said that you were going to start service to the day that they actually pay you for services. And then the next thing that you want to look at is in the grant, is this a match grant? And then what ratio is the match? So they might say a 1-to-1 match, right? So a 1-to-1 match is, or 50% match is however much the project costs, they're only going to provide half the funding. And then you have to tell them how you're going to come up with the other half of the funding. They want to make sure you've got skin in the game. They don't want to fund the whole project and then you are not cautious with the money, or you underserve the amount of people that you said you were going to serve, or make less of an impact that you said that you were going to have. And then you want to look out to see if there is a pre-grant meeting. So that you might be required to come and participate in the meeting before they'll even allow you to apply for the funding, so they can answer any questions, so they can get out any information that they need to get to you in person. I know we're in the middle of COVID-19 right now, so that may not be the case as far as in-person meetings, but they may require a Zoom or whatever before they'll even give you the application. So look out for that, look out for those dates. And then once you actually have the grant that you want to apply for, then you can move on. And so now I'm gonna skip along to, I actually did go on to grants.gov, and I pulled one of the first grants that I saw, which was the teacher exchange, the Fulbright Teacher Exchange Program. Now, obviously this grant has one recipient and it says Fulbright on it, or they anticipate giving it to one recipient, which means they probably already know who they want to provide this funding to, but they're required to put out a funding notification. They're required to attach a funding number or an opportunity number to it. And so they did. But when you pull up this funding, quite literally, they are going to tell you everything that they want you to know about writing this proposal. This particular grant has 40 some odd pages to it. One is 21 pages and the other one is 24 pages. So we got 45 pages worth of information that they want you to know. And this is short. This is what tells me that this is probably for just an individual person. Or I mean, not person, but individual entity. Because I have picked up funding opportunities that were 40 and 50 and 100 pages just for the grant announcement, like the full announcement with everything that it tells you that it wants to do. But we're gonna break this down. You want to look at this and literally look, and I'm not, because I done broke my little stand thing, so we are on my computer. I don't know if you can see it, but I pulled up the funding opportunity, right? So it tells you what the funding is for, who it's intended, what kind of organization you need to be. This particular one does not require match funds. And then I scroll down to, they have a section about the narrative. And the narrative is what you are going to write to them. And there's going to be attachments and stuff that it requires. But the narrative is what we're talking about, like how to write an actual grant. And they will tell you, see that narrative? It tells you how to write the grant, what they want in the grant, what you need, what information you need. And this, like I said, this is short. A lot of times they will have like a point one and a whole paragraph on what it is that you need to tell them in that. Now, I want to discuss just one section of how to structure your answer. And that's really important. I do anywhere between 20 and 30 grant scores a year, where I'm looking over actual grant applications that are in review for funding, and I'm scoring them based on a rubric that they've given us. But the rubric is no different from the information that they give you in the grant, only my rubric has like a scale on it, and it tells me where to score someone based on their answer. Now, personally, and when I talk to other grant scores, if you make me work to look for the answer, I'm not going to tell you that I'm going to score you lower, but it just frustrates me. You don't want to frustrate the grant scorer. You want to make sure that information is as easily accessible as possible. And I know people have a lot of things that they want to communicate, but the first thing is to answer that question. Whatever question they pose to you in the grant, answer. Now this one is kind of open-ended, but I'm going to give you like a couple of sentence example on how to improve your grant answers. Now, one of the questions was about activities. So I'm not saying that this answer is wrong, but I'll show you how to improve the answer. So I'm just going to show you the answer. And this is just something I wrote off the top of my head. But that's me showing you the answer, right? I'll read it now. It says, so as far as activities, we plan to exercise participants 3 times weekly by taking them out for walks on the beach, running on a track, and going to the gym. We will also engage them in monthly cultural exchanges at local museums and art galleries. Finally, they will be engaged in bi-weekly life skills training and activities with volunteer mentors. Seems like an okay answer, right? You answered the question. If they let you, you want to title that answer with, whatever the title was for the question they asked you, and then you want to highlight that specific targeted information so that the grant writer does not have to look for it. If they let you, sometimes they say no embolding, no italicizing, whatever. Okay. And I'll show you how to get through that too. So this next one, and I've blown it up on purpose. This next one, see, program activities, they don't have to look far to find what the answer to the question is. This one I've kind of stacked it a little bit different because they're allowing me to highlight. So when I highlight as a grant reviewer, if I'm actually reading through all of this and not just searching for information, then I'll see all of the accolades and everything first, as well as arrive at the answer. If I'm just reading for information, I can say, boom, program activities, and then wow, weekly aerobic and strength training exercise, bi-weekly life skills, and courses and monthly cultural exchanges. Cool. I can mark you off 10 or 100% or whatever that is for that question and move on with my life. But I've also top stacked it for people who are very meticulous and actually not just reading for information or to see that you've answered the question. So I've come with the credentials first. As a nationally recognized community housing and development organization, we have developed the internal resources through daily staff and dependable volunteer network to provide weekly aerobic and strength training exercises, bi-weekly life skill courses, and monthly cultural exchanges. So I've told you a little bit about the organization, what our credentials are, kind of trying to build trust with you, as well as answer that question. Now, if they don't let you highlight, don't do that, because it makes it a little bit more difficult for them to find the answer to the question they've just asked. It's probably going to tick the grant reviewer off because it looks like fluff. This last one is if they don't allow you to highlight. I still titled it, right? But in this one, I've provided the answer to the question first. And then I've kind of segued off into the other stuff. So this one, program activities, you saw it up at the top with the section number. Our organization provides weekly aerobic and strength training exercises, bi-weekly life skill courses, and monthly cultural exchanges. So if I'm one of those information readers, which I am, you answered the question. I didn't have to go through fluff to get it. But then if I'm someone who is meticulous and I'm reading through it, it goes on to say, as a nationally recognized community housing and development organization, we have developed the internal resources through daily staff and a dependable volunteer network, which support the aforementioned activities on a consistent and sustainable basis. So I'm going to pause there to tell you why I use that kind of language. A lot of these grants want to know that you are not going to have to come back year after year and ask for money. You may, but you at least want to convey the idea that you're not going to have to. That you have developed something for your organization, or you have a plan for your organization to move on from asking for money from them. All right? In addition to that, you want to consider what the priorities of the organization or the department are when you're applying for funding. So they may tell you that it's arts and culture, but when you take a look at what their priorities are, they may have a priority for children. They may have a priority for individuals with disabilities. They may have a priority for people who've been diagnosed with HIV/AIDS. You want to make sure that you not only speak to that, but your organization fits that. So don't go saying that you're going to serve children and you don't serve children. So that's that. Things to remember: grant proposals are investments. So you need to convey in your proposal why your organization is a good investment for this particular venue, whether that be an endowment, whether that be a federal department, whether that be a local agency, a private foundation, anything. You want to make sure that you convey to them why you're a good fit for their organization and their funding. You want to show them how they will get the most bang for their buck. So how many people can you serve? Are you culturally competent in the population that you want to serve, or the cause that you're championing? I can't say that word right now, but you know what I mean. You want to pay attention to the rules of funding, and you want to make sure that information that you put in your grant is easy to find. So that is like my beginner's grant writing. I will go through a few of my credentials. I have a bachelor's in psychology, a master's in criminal justice, a master's certificate in business administration. I received a certificate in grant nonprofit management. I received a certificate in grant proposal writing from Emory University, and I have spent maybe the past decade in nonprofit right now. The past few years, I've transitioned to a full-time painter, but I don't think that erases my more than a decade. I started in 2000, I think it was 2010. Yeah, so that's a decade. I started in 2010 in nonprofit, and prior to that, business development and insurance and all of that. So anyway, if I have been of any help to you today, then I'm glad. Feel free to inbox me. This one was a freebie. The next one will cost you. Okay, bye.